In the last step, we created a REST API to create a user. We were able to send a post request to /users with the details of the user, and we were able to create a user. However, we saw that the response status we are sending back is 200. Is there a way we can improve that? Before we get there, let's get a high-level overview of the different response statuses for a REST API. Whenever you create a REST API, it's very, very important to return the correct response status when a resource is not found. For example, earlier we typed in a resource which does not exist, and we saw that we got a 404 back. And type in localhost 8080, and let's type in a URL which does not exist. This returns a status of 404. That basically means the resource is not found. So that's good. That's really good. That's something which is provided by default by Spring Boot. Spring Boot auto-configures an error page and an error response. Similar to that, if there's an exception that happened in the server, the recommended response status is 500. If there's a validation error, if you are sending certain details and they don't pass the validation, the recommended response status is 400. So it's very, very important that when you create a REST API, you return the right response status from it. Let's quickly look at a few other important response statuses. 200 is success. For most of the REST API that we have created until now, we have been returning a status of 200. Another response status is 201, which is created. When you execute a post request and a new resource is created, that's when you would return a created response status. This is represented by 201. Another possible response status is 204, no content. If let's say you are executing a put request to update the content, in that kind of scenario, it might be one of the options to return a status of no content. 401 stands for unauthorized. A little later in the course, we'll be adding authentication and authorization for our REST API. And you'd see that when user does not pass in the right details along with the request, you'd get a 401 response status. Another response status is 400, which is bad request. For example, a validation error. We already talked about 404, which is resource not found. And 500 is a server error. So whenever you're building REST API, you want to make the best use of HTTP. Make sure that your URLs are designed right. Make sure that you're making use of the right request methods. And the third important thing is to make sure that you are returning the right response status from your REST API. The right response status for us right now for the post request is 201. How can we make this method to return a response status of 201? What we'll do in here is response entity. It's one of the classes which is present in Spring Framework org Spring Framework.htp. So in this class, there's a method called created. So there are different methods for different statuses. You can see accepted, bad request, created, no content, not found. So there are a number of methods which are present in here based on the response status you would want to return back. What we want to return is a status of created. So what we want to do is to create a new builder with created status. So I'll say created. For now, I'll return location as null. We will need to further improve this a little later. For now, I would say response entity dot created null, and I would return this back. And I would do a control 1 command 1, and I would say change method return type to body builder. Actually, I don't want to return a body builder. I would want to return the response entity back. So I'll say dot build. So once you do a build, you can go ahead and do the control 1 again, and you can say change method return type to response entity of object. So this looks good. So we are returning a response entity back. And the type of the response entity is user. So let's change that as well. And now the server restarts. One of the important things for you to remember is that we are making use of a static list. Whenever the server restarts, the entire list gets reset. So whenever the server restarts, you'll only have 3 users present. If you go in and execute the request localhost 8080 users, you'll see that there are 3 users present. Let's add another user. Now I would want to add Ravi with this birth date, and I would want to send a post request to this URL. So let's do a send. And now you can see that the response status is 201. So we are returning a created response status when we are executing a post method. That's good. Let's improve this further. Whenever we create a REST API, we should always think from the perspective of consumer of the REST API. Now, the consumer of this REST API is trying to create a user. Once a user is created, we are returning a status back of 201. In addition, can we return back the URI of the user who is created? Can we return back, for example, that /users/4 is the URI of the user which is created? If I return /users/4 as the URI, then the consumer can execute a request to that. So he can say localhost 8080/users/4, that's a URI which is being written back. He can check it and see the details of the new user in there. The question is, how can we implement it in here? Typically, whenever you want to return a URL of a created resource, there is a specific HTTP header you need to make use of. That header is called location header. And the created method in here and the created method in response entity actually accepts a URI location. So let's see how to build the location right now. So I'll type in location in here. I'll do a control-1, create a local variable location. Now we would want to get the location. So we would want to create this location and send it as part of our HTTP response. Instead of hard coding the entire URL in here, what we'll do is we'll make use of the current request URL. So the current request always comes to this URL. What we want to do is we would want to append /4 to this. Instead of directly appending /4, the way we would need to do that is by saying /users. We'd want to append a ID, and we'd want to replace the value of the ID with the value of the ID inside user. So user.getID. So what we'll do is we'll pick up the /users and we will append /ID and we will replace the ID with user.getID. Let's see how to do that right now. Let's move this comment to the top and let's remove this. I can remove all the other comments which are in here. Those are not really needed anymore. Yep, this looks clean. This is the only comment we would need right now. So what we want to do is to first get the URI of the current method. There is an inbuilt utility method in Spring which can help you do that. Servlet URI, and press Control space or Command space. You can see that there is a class called Servlet URI Component Builder. Inside that, there is a method called from current request. So this would set up the URL of the current request. So this part is now ready. The current request URL is ready. What we want to do is to add a path. So we want to add path /ID. So I would want to add this in here. So to the current request path, I would want to add this path. And what I would want to do is to replace the ID in here with the ID of the created user. So I would say dot build and expand. So what you would need to do is to use this specific value. So what we'll do is over here service.save user would return the user back. So I'll assign it to a new variable. I'll say it's saved user, and the saved user dot get ID. And we would want to convert this to a URI. The code might look a little complex. Let's quickly look at it right now. Let's look at it step by step and understand it. To the URI of the current request, what we want to do is to add a path /ID, and we would want to replace this variable which is present in here with the ID of the created user. And we would want to convert it to a URI and return it back. So we have a location that is returned back, and we are returning the location as part of our response entity. When I save this, the server gets restarted. So we'll only have 3 to-dos right now. So if I actually go ahead and type in /users, you have only 3 users. And I can go to Talend API tester and send a post request. You can see that we are getting a status of 201. And if you scroll down, you also see a location header in here. Localhost 8080/users comes because of this, from the path of the current request. That's the path of the current request. This is exactly what's in here. So to the path of the current request, we are appending a variable and replacing it with the value. So ID, we are replacing it with the newly created ID, which is 4. So the /4 is appended and returned back. And that's what we are seeing as part of our location header. So the consumer of this specific API now can go in and click this, and he can get the details of the newly created user. He can say send, and he should be able to see the details of the newly created user. I'll remove this comment in here, and let's format the code a little bit more. In this step, we improved the create user method. In addition to returning a status of 201, which is created, we also return the location of the created resource as part of the response headers. Whenever you create a REST API, it's very, very important to think from the perspective of a consumer. I'm sure you're having a wonderful time, and I'll see you in the next step.